Hello, and welcome to the Storied Human. I'm Lynn Thompson, and I have Kathleen McDermott with me today. I met her in a podcast class, and she and I just have a lot in common. And we started chatting, and I've listened to her podcast. It's wonderful. Her podcast is called Your Life, Your Way. I love her story. She's come through a lot, and she teaches other women now how they can work through their issues using techniques she learned as a stress relief coach, helping women reduce stress and break cycles. It includes signature program yoga philosophy, life on and off the mat with restorative yoga. She's certified in stress management in 2012 and has yoga training in 2006 and 2011. She is a professional stress and lifestyle management coach and restorative yoga guide. It's such a cool combination. The things that I've seen from you on social media, especially a recent post with all the different sized women and different abled people, and recognizing that we can all benefit from yoga. It's not for any specific shape. So I just really love your approach, and I'd love to hear more about your story. So welcome.
First of all, thank you. Thank you for having me. We've already been having this great conversation, and we said, oh my God, we got to hit record. We're having so much fun.
I do that every time.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm grateful and honored. But the post, yes, the images that you were talking about, that's life. Each person in there is uniquely who they are, and that's just life. We are all very unique. It's you ask, for history and how I got to where I am. And as you mentioned, I did my certifications, but we all know that life experience is really where it all comes from.
Oh, yeah.
But I did start teaching, and I wanted to teach differently. I wanted to teach so that everyone felt they could be included. And, you hear so many people saying, oh, I can't do yoga. Well, yes, you can. Everyone can.
Oh, I love that.
It's just about doing your yoga. And Lynn, when we hear the word yoga, we think of the pose. We automatically picture the poses. And yoga is life. Yoga is the journey. So in going through and doing my training and beginning to teach, although I had men in my classes, I began to really be able to see that something was occurring with the women on the mat. That life off the mat was coming out on the mat.
Wow. And
the reason they felt safe in facing those is because we were creating their pose. So you might have, for example, downward facing dog. You might see 4 different styles because they're all figuring out their own, with my help, of course, because we use all kinds of props, everything from a wall to a cushion to a bolster to a chair to a strap, whatever the individual may need to come into their pose so that they can find their way. That's what yoga is really about. It's about finding your way in life and allowing it to come up. So it was really about holding a safe space and helping them create their own practice so that they could face comfortably whatever was coming up. And it just began to be so cool to watch them expand, to find a place where they thought they couldn't be, and then to finally be there. And just have them be so excited or in tears or just so calm and so happy. And of course, the next question is, what's next? And it just blossomed. It blossomed into, because I knew it was more than teaching a class. They were actually teaching me. We all know, we're all students. But I did decide to, because I could never teach an actual yoga class without the guidance. So I did the certifications. Did all that and learned, and we know the stress is the foundation of our struggles. I mean, it's just the foundation and it's the result. Excuse me. So it just blossomed into coaching. So I was teaching classes and coaching clients, but life has a way, whether it's God or source or universe, whichever. The universe decided, well, if this is your calling, which it is, we're going to give you a few more lessons of your own.
Ooh, whoops.
Yes. And of course, I tend to be just a little stubborn and didn't always want to listen to the signs or pay attention to the signs. So I would have to say the very first experience, you'll hit right onto this, perimenopause.
Oh, no.
What What kind of joy in life is that? Everyone talks about menopause, but let's really talk about perimenopause.
Oh, it's even worse at times. Yeah. And and you don't know you're in it. You don't know you're in it because everybody's timing is so different.
Yes. Oh, I was told by a female doctor, no less, which was even more frustrating. You're too young. There's no way you're in perimenopause. So we need to do all these invasive tests. Well, I knew I was based on my own studies. And it was, this is going to be a podcast for another day because it's a huge conversation that we all need to start having is about perimenopause and that people are not listening. It's a better today because we have functional medicine folks today. But back then, they just didn't listen. So ultimately, all they want to do is hand you an antidepressant and say, good luck.
That's a good point, Kathleen. Anything with hormones, I don't think doctors are like up to speed. Mm-mm. And it's not cool. Like they just don't know what to do with you. No. So I have polycystic ovarian syndrome, and they basically had no clue back then. I was undiagnosed for years and years. Now they have a little bit more knowledge, but I was in my early 30s. And unless you're trying to have a baby, they don't even know about it.
See, that's how it started coming up because we had decided it was time to start a family and I wasn't getting pregnant. And my mother had very similar issues. She was not able to get pregnant after a certain young age.
Yikes.
So that's why I really started to think that
so you had a feel for it. Yeah.
But ultimately we ended up having twin boys.
That's so great.
Yeah, we went through fertility. So they're my greatest joys, but that's another, I'll get off on that tangent because they're just my greatest gifts. But so perimenopause was a huge disruption in my life. Huge.
And like I said, you're not expecting it, right? No, especially if it happens early and it can really mess you up. Like you're like, what the heck's going on?
Totally. Yeah. It's something that I really feel strongly about opening up that conversation more because women are suffering without understanding about where to go. They're not being heard and seen and listened to.
No.
So it's really a broad topic that we need to jump into.
I think that's a podcast.
Yeah.
Maybe with you and me. Because I was thinking that before we talked about how that's if I was going to focus on something that I don't think is covered well enough, that's what I would focus on.
That's a doozy.
Is the menopause thing. And we don't have enough information about leading up to it.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So that was my first introduction to chaos in life. You had, we'll give it that gentle word. But you have your things through life, but I ultimately things that really started waking me up.
Yeah.
So that was really the beginning. And then going into the boys both leaving home at the same time for college was another huge.
No, that would be
who
hard.
Am I now? What is who am I now?
And you got that double thing. Like I know it sounds crazy, but when my oldest went, I still had another one in high school. And I was like, oh, well, I still have this one to baby and focus on, right?
You kind of eased into it.
You have two at once. That would be really hard.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a change, a definite change.
Yeah.
And that question of, okay, now what? And it just compounded everything that I was feeling and going through emotionally and mentally and physically. And then ultimately what really knocked me to my knees was the divorce. That was the most traumatic experience of my life.
Oh my God, that's so hard.
And you and I've talked about grief, and I don't care what side of the table you're on, it's hard. Divorce is hard. And I respect anyone going through it, no matter what side of the table you're on. It's just, there are unique circumstances, yes, but the average couple who's come to that part of no longer being together, it's hard. It's that vision that we had. And it's hard to say, you go with, well, why me? Why me? Why me?
Right.
So ultimately you combine all of these things together, and these were my wake up calls. Yeah. I said, I looked up and it says, you could just give me 5 minutes of leaving me alone. No more lessons. Had enough.
I don't want to grow this much. Leave me alone.
I get to be 5 minutes.
No, it sounds really hard. It sounds like a cross section of just everything. Yeah. And how did you get through it?
Well, the first was all the pity party and all the sadness and all the heavy, heavy, heavy duty, grief, darkness, suffering. And at some point I had to ask myself, okay, do you want to stay here or do you want to get out? Your boys are seeing everything. They've always seen you, everything through to this day. What do you want them to continue to see and be
I
a part
love
of?
that. Oh my, I love that perspective. Like,
Yeah.
what do I want them to see? That's really cool.
And the honest question was, after that honest question, if it's working for my students, my clients, why wouldn't it work for me?
Oh yeah.
Right. So I began to practice what I was preaching.
Oh, I love this. Yeah.
And it just began to bring me to more and more questions about myself. And this was the toughest one. And you see, I'm sure you can relate to this. The toughest question I had to ask was, what was my role in it all?
Oh, that's heavy.
Yeah. Because we are so conditioned to find fault and blame out there. It's very hard as humans to take responsibility for our own suffering. Got to be somebody else's fault.
That's so true. We're taught that.
And
Yeah.
yeah. And that was the hardest thing I had to face. And once I did and really started examining, then I started really seeing the conditioning, which is what I just desperately, my purpose is to help women face that conditioning, because that is ultimately where our stress is, why we're so stressed. It's the
Yes.
conditioning from birth, which, bless our parents, they do the best they can with what they know in their conditioning. And the generational stuff just continues until we those cycles in the bud. And society, the conditioning that we get from society is overwhelming. And
It is. It's hard to be a girl. It is.
Yeah.
It's hard to be a boy too. There's just a lot
because they
going
have their
on.
own conditioning. They do. They have their own, but it's different.
Right.
People say, well, do you work with men? Only my sons.
Yeah.
Only my sons.
Yeah.
I'm not, women are my goal, because I know if I went through the hell that I went through and opened my eyes to things and it's not easy to do the work, but if I can do it, so can everyone else.
What I'm struck with about you is that you create this nurturing and safe space for others. You're very supportive of others, and you want to use what happened to you. Like, I just love when someone does that. It's like, I want to do something with what I went through, and I want to help. I just love that impulse. So I'm curious about what you did before this.
What I did before, in what way? Can you elaborate?
Before the yoga or before the stress management? Like, did you have another career?
Work experiences, primarily most of my work experience has been in some form of sales, whether it's been newspaper sales or TV sales. So I've tinkered in a variety of things. I'm a multi-passionate person, and found that after experiencing those, the work that brought me the most, I was home with the boys for quite some time when they were growing up. And then it was, okay, you need to go back to work. What do you want to do that fits? And I actually started driving a school bus for the boys' district. So
I love that.
On the same schedule as them. And everything that I'd done prior to, I understand, was an experience that helped me grow and learn and be. But that was really where I got to appreciate the students and build relationships, treated them with respect, and they treated me with respect. Most of them had a couple little ones that are just another story.
No, I am so glad you brought that up.
But yeah, it was just
because somebody just commented on that, how much they loved their bus driver. It was on one of those Facebook groups that I'm on. So it's like a million years ago. And they said, oh, she had just passed away. And it was like 40 years ago, right, that we had her as a bus driver. And people were like, she was always so respectful. She was always so great. I looked forward to seeing her every day. It's one of those jobs that maybe is underappreciated by status seekers, but the reality of what you're doing every day for those children. I totally get that, because when I was in between gigs, I became a substitute teacher, and I worked at my kids' school. I worked at the elementary and the middle school, and I fell in love with those children. Just fell in love with them, and was able to be supportive and nurturing and really enjoy them. And what a beautiful thing to be able to do. And you did that every day.
It was so much fun. And my middle high kids were fabulous. People say, they're the toughest, but they were wonderful. And
because you were wonderful.
Well,
they reflect back what we, like, if you respect them.
Exactly. And everyone wants to be seen and heard, and they're no different. Just
That's
because they're
so
kids doesn't
cool.
mean they need to be. And again, this is another whole conversation we're not going to get into because I really get up on my high horse, but kids deserve respect.
They do.
They deserve respect. It's not a case of being seen and not heard. They really want to be heard and
Yeah.
seen, and they have a lot to offer as well.
Well,
And they're
that's,
learning and they're growing and they have a lot to teach us. My kids are my greatest teachers.
yeah. Well, they're very lucky to have you because that's such a great way to look at children, to respect them, because then you're teaching them to respect others. Like
Mhm.
what children do, this cracks me up. I have a friend whose parents were kind of strict with her and a little bit, didn't let her do a lot or didn't give her much. They would mete out things, right?
Mhm.
And she struggles with being a little, selfish with stuff, like because she was raised that way. Now she's older and she's generous, but it just struck me like my parents were always super generous and with us and people, but they were firm. They were very much like, here are the rules. But as far as like food and money and clothes, they were generous. They were like, well, if you need that, you know. So we became generous. Like you become the way you're taught, the way you're treated. So to be stingy with someone, you're going to make a stingy person.
Conditioning.
And it's so like kind of blew my mind. I was like, wow, my parents really, because they were told they were spoiling us. Because that's that old fashioned, you're spoiling them.
Oh, yeah. Don't
Yeah.
pick the baby up when they're crying. Yeah,
I
you
was
do.
told I was spoiling my children. I was told I hold them too much.
Not possible.
And I looked at the woman and I said, look, some babies like to be held. I'm lucky because I got two babies that like to be held all the time. But I have seen babies that wriggle and wriggle to get out of your arms. And if mine did that, I would put them down. But mine don't do that.
No,
mine
mine
just
didn't either.
mine didn't seem to be able to get enough of me.
Even when they
So I
turned
guess
14, they still hugged me and said, I love you, even in front of their friends.
I love that.
Yeah.
I have a nephew and he was, he had gotten big and tall and giant. And at 16 years old, he would sit on his mom's lap and she's tiny. And it just made me want to cry. It was so sweet and dear that he loved his
Beautiful.
mom. And it doesn't change.
No, it doesn't. Mine are going to be 29 this year. And I love how they look out for their mom and how they're just so unique and so, I'm just blessed. I'm just extremely
You
blessed.
are.
And as I always tell them, thank you for choosing me. It's an honor to be your mom.
Oh, but I feel like
Now I have a tissue here. So I said I wasn't going to cry today.
but it is such a gift.
Yeah.
I feel it's funny because I was thinking about, I also stayed home a little bit with them and I had, I had contract jobs all over the place. I didn't really have a career that I'm going to retire from neatly, that kind of thing. And I thought, yeah, I had some good jobs and whatever. I didn't have anything where I really progressed or, in that traditional way. And then I thought, yeah, but I put two nice humans on the planet, it's like,
Yeah.
for real. I really love how kind they are. And I hear that when you talk about your boys, like they're kind human beings.
They are.
And, you had something to do with that.
We may not be married anymore, but to tell you, we did a great job raising our boys.
Your
We
husband
really
and you
did. We
were a good
weren't,
team.
we made mistakes as every parent does, but ultimately when your kids come back and say thank you and they come back and you can hear the lessons that you taught, you can see the lessons come through and you can hear how their responses are and they come back and say thank you. It's a beautiful thing.
That is so cool. I noticed too, like I had kids later, so I was a little more ready for them. And I think that I showed them more of my best self, my husband too. But I also became better for them. I found that unless you're in crisis, you rise to meet them, you become better.
Yeah. And going through everything that I did and making the choice to do better and to do the work, which I'm sure I said it too, and I'll say it. No, it's not easy. People say, well, it's easier said than done. You're right. But it's worth, choose your heart. It was hard to stay where I was, and it was going to be hard to do the work. So I chose my heart. And going through all of that, and it took years, and it's a practice. It's going to take the rest of my life because I want to continue to grow and expand and to just be better than I was yesterday. But the day that Connor got married, and take a breath.
Oh,
They both came to me that day separately and told me how proud they were of me. So that
Isn't that
was
wonderful?
worth all the hard work. And it just is, it's what I use to keep doing better.
What I also love is that they don't have to worry about you. You
No,
took
but they
care of
want to do.
yourself
Yeah.
and you did the work and they saw it
Yeah.
and they don't have to worry about you. They're proud of you.
Yeah.
And think about how many children are worried about their parents. Their
Which
parents aren't,
there was a time they were. Yeah.
the parents aren't taking care of themselves, or they're not doing well, or they can't get out of a financial thing, or they can't, that's the last thing we want to do to our kids, is have them worry about us.
Yes. And that's why I'm so passionate about the legacy.
Yeah.
How often do we ask ourselves, we're 20 years old, we're meeting people, we're having fun, we're going to bars, we're doing whatever it is we want to do, we're having fun. We meet the person, 30s, you're married and you're settling in, and life starts rolling, the career, the family.
Yeah.
By your 40s, we're going so fast. We don't, you're lucky you're not wearing two different shoes. That's how fast we're getting out the door and going. And it can be so hard to come out of that pace. And we don't have the time, or we think we don't have the time. We don't take the time to ask ourselves important questions. Legacy, number one, isn't how much money we're going to leave. We need to get out of that tangible, this thing we're leaving, the house or the whatever. So it really was a question that I finally asked myself: what legacy do I want to leave for my kids? And then I have a grandson, so now it's even wider as far as, okay, now. So I do talk to my boys, and I do talk to, I call them my girls. They're, my daughter-in-law and Catherine, because I want them to grasp sooner.
Yes.
Than I did. A legacy is so much more than stuff.
Yes.
How we live our life, and it's about breaking the cycles. I saw my mom break a very important cycle with my boys, and it was a beautiful thing, and it was wonderful to watch. But at the time, I didn't grasp it for what it was. It took me, in the process of doing my own work, to recognize that. And I had broken a cycle of my own from my parents with my own boys. And I kind of recognized it, but didn't grasp the depth of it. You mentioned the word depth earlier, before we get recording, and that's get into as well. But I didn't. Once I finally grasped that, then it became, holy, excuse me, crap. What do I want them to take forward? I can see a little bit of what we passed on that might not be in their best interest to keep, for them to grow and expand. So we talk about those things. And now that Connor has a son, okay, where do you want how do you want your legacy to be with him? So really taking that time to examine why we are the way we are. And I don't mean this in judgment or criticism. And people, you see those memes that say, don't look back, you're not going there. You have to look back.
Yeah.
Because that's
good.
where it
I'm
all
glad
came
you
from.
said that.
You have to look back. I'm not saying go back to that trauma and stay in that trauma and experience, but it's about looking at it for all the experiences and what they were. And it comes out to be forgiveness. Because once you take that look and you understand that, oh my gosh, they were all going through their own generational societal conditioning. So it creates forgiveness, it creates understanding and acceptance and empathy, compassion and empathy.
Oh, that's
so for yourself and for others. So now when I see someone reacting, my first thought is, wonder what baggage they're carrying. Wonder what experiences are still weighing on them. And when something happens with me, when I react, I think, okay, what do I still need to work on? What do I still want to work on? And you and I were talking about that. Yeah. Because you've done the work.
Some of the work.
It's a life. Yeah. It's a life. But you recognize it faster. There's less harsh judgment of self. I don't go in and start criticizing. I might say, well, I won't use the word. But I don't, it's in a loving way. I don't, and I think, okay, where do I want to look? How do I want to look? Why is this coming forth now? Which I tell you, this is a trigger for people. people say, oh, your words hurt, don't offend people. Well, let me tell you something. If I say something to you, Lynn, and it sounds like I'm trying to hurt your feelings or it's offensive in some way, that has nothing to do with you. That's because there's something in me.
Right.
That is something that I still need to go within and look at. And if you say something to me and I start to react to what you're saying, then I also want to ask, why am I reacting to what you're saying? There's something within me.
It's kicking something up. Right.
Yes.
There's so much that comes up when you talk about this. The first thing I thought of is going back to a memory. I think looking at your past can be really helpful, and going back to a memory that was encoded in your brain as a little child, and you go back as an adult and you look at things that you just took for granted about that memory, and you re-examine, was that really true? As an adult, you see, like you said, well, my parents were struggling too, and they had their own things. I mean, both my parents lost both their parents in their 20s.
Wow.
And when I think of them now, I think of them as brave souls soldiering on and raising us. They were good at it. And I think of them in a different way. Mm-hmm. And when I think of the memories from that time, I think of people struggling, and it's just good to do that. It's healing.
Yes.
And then the other wonderful thing is that you do start treating yourself better too. That forgiveness is so powerful. Mm-hmm. And I love that idea that we take the love that we have to give others, right? I mean, I do this so often now. We give it to ourselves. Like I say, I'll screw up and I'll say, well, I literally say to myself, well, how would you talk to someone you love who did this? And I would always say to them, well, you didn't mean it, or you'll do better next time. I have oodles of generous praise and love for them, right? So now I'm trying to do that for myself each time, back to myself, because the more you love yourself, the more you radiate love to others. So that came out of the podcast class and the mindfulness that we talked about, where I became more conscious of doing that, of treating myself the way I would treat a friend, because I would like to think that I'm a good friend to people. And so why am I not a good friend to myself? So that forgiveness thing, very powerful. You got me going on that one.
I have a coach I'm working with, because even coaches need coaches. And she said to me, practice treating yourself like a guest in your home.
Ooh.
Every day, do something as if you were a guest in your home.
I love that.
Because, if you have a guest, someone in your home, you're going to go out of your way to make them be comfortable.
You're going to be wonderful to them. You're going to show hospitality. You're going to serve them something wonderful. You're going to make sure there's fresh towels. Oh, wow. I love that. Yeah. When I lived alone, I did do that. I lived alone for quite a while, and I did do that. I don't know if I got that from somebody, my mother or somebody, because my parents went through a divorce, and I saw her taking good care of herself. That's very good.
How we ever, which is another whole conversation, is to where it all, well, it begins at a very young age, but we develop that it's loving ourselves and caring for ourselves. God forbid you put yourself first.
Yeah, especially women, right?
So wrong. No, it's not. No, it's not. No, stop that. Stop being and doing how the rest of the world thinks you should.
Yeah, that's hard to break out of. You make a really good point with the conditioning stuff. That is hard to break out of. And I'm a people pleaser. So, I think I spent the first 40 years of my life just making sure everyone was okay.
Let me ask you this out recently too. If we are people pleasing, what are we enabling them? Are we enabling them from finding their own way and living their life how they really, I don't like the word should, but it's their life, their gift. So if we're enabling them, and if they are trying to put their happiness as our responsibility, and vice versa, whose life are we living?
Yeah, that's a really good point. Oh my God. And also, I'm not being my authentic self if I'm doing that. Yeah. And when I hit that, when I finally realized that, I don't even know how old I was when I realized that everyone deserves your authentic self. Mm-hmm. They do.
And sometimes whether they like it or not.
Whether they like it or not. And I'm a little bit, it's funny, I'm just sharper. Like I ran into a situation with this job that I have, and they're onboarding me, and it's like a disaster. And I've been on a lot of jobs, and I have a lot of knowledge about how you should probably do that. And I'm not mean, but I'm very curt, and I'm very definite in a way that I never would have been. And I just say, because it's funny how clear it looks now, but it's about money. Like they said, oh no, you started on this day. And I'm like, no, I started 2 days before. So how are you going to pay me for those 2 days? And they're like, no, you started on this day. And I was like, no, I have proof from my client that I started 2 days before. And I ended the email with, your company has to fix this. Thanks. I would have never talked like that in the past. I would have been like all afraid, and I would have, it's ridiculous.
Fear of causing conflict.
Oh my God, conflict. I still work on that one. I bet you help a lot of women with that.
Well, it doesn't necessarily, first of all, I sometimes, I just said to you when we first started talking today, I think we were separated at birth because I am so not a coddler. I don't want to be coddled, and I don't coddle. I will hold as much safe support for you as you need, but I'm also going to say, so how's that working for you? And it's not meant to be in a conflicting way. It's not meant to be, it's just that we have become so conditioned to be defensive. Oh my God, I spent so many years being defensive, so much of my life being defensive.
Yeah.
And again, it comes back to that, realizing what is your role? Why am I being defensive? Examining the conditioning, it all comes back to that.
Right.
So, but yeah, and it doesn't have to be about conflict. It's, I think, more of maybe a protection mechanism to not avoidance, maybe an avoidance mechanism.
Right. Yeah, I think I was trained to like never ever. Well, you don't want to make a fuss. As a little girl, when we were raised, right? It was just put your legs together.
Keep your mouth shut.
Keep your mouth shut. Be a nice little girl, good little girl, and you get so much praise.
Be a good girl
in school, right? It's the little girls that behave like that get great grades, and the teacher loves them, and so you get strokes for that, and so you keep going that way. But that doesn't, it's like I always talk about stories, like whatever story you're telling yourself, right? It might not fit anymore, and so that story of always being a good girl, how's that working for you? It doesn't always fit, right? It doesn't fit anymore. And so
that good or bad is just not
that. Yeah. And so I find it so cool that you do what you do. And I have found in my little way that I am more nurturing. I always was nurturing. I always was supportive. I'm just that kind of person. I love to love people and support them, but I'm able to be more so in a more authentic way because I love myself more, which sounds so corny, but it's true, right? I find I'm able to be much more open and more loving. Like I just don't waste time. I just go right there with my friends, very direct, very loving and supportive. And I say also the intuition thing kicks in because I wasn't super aware of it, but I always did it. I would say what someone needed brought up. I would say it and I didn't know why. And they'd be like, whoa, so I would bring something up that needed to be brought up and I didn't even know. So now I'm getting a little more aware of that. And I think that also helps.
See, and it's a beautiful thing because when you start shedding it, it's like an onion, all the layers of an onion and all the conditioning begins to cover us in all these layers. And at the very center, hidden, buried underneath, suffocating is us. But once you start shedding all of those, so much of you is able to come out. And yes, the compassion, the empathy, forget all of that. But also that intuition does become stronger.
Yeah.
And it's safer because then you get hit with less 2x4s because you're not listening. So
but I could tell some people don't, like, I'll just jump right into it and I'll say, well, I don't think so-and-so really wants to do that. She didn't seem like she really wanted to do that. And I think she's got something going on and I'm worried about her. And they'll be like, what? You know what I mean? Like, I'll just jump right into it. Like, no, I feel like she's really afraid of something, or and some people are not seeing that. So I have to be careful that I explain that I feel it, that I'm feeling it about the person. But yeah, there's The conflict thing, that never gets easier for me. I'm just still working on that.
There are things, and I have to laugh. There are so many things that will, happen through the day of the week, the month, the year. And I was having a conversation with lovely woman. We were having a challenge trying to get my account online to work, and had to go through all that verification stuff,
Hate that.
But, I understand. I'd rather be safe, have my account safe. Thought we resolved it. Called back within 5 minutes, still wasn't resolved. Called back, got the same woman. And she says to me, well, we have to go through the verification. I said, honey, you and I were just talking. She says, yes, but now you're talking about getting in online and we have to go through a complete different verification. So I was losing my patience. Let's just say at that point, I'd about had enough. And finally I stopped myself and I said, first of all, I apologize. This has nothing to do with you. Apparently there's something that I still need to work on.
That's so lovely. That's lovely.
And we both had a good laugh and we ended up resolving the issue. But my point is, it's funny with the different things that will come up. And it's just an opportunity to say, okay, some of it is still there. You recognize it.
Yeah.
And I just stress this so much because it allows me to see that in others and to be more accepting.
That's so powerful. Yeah.
Doesn't mean I still don't get a New York rile every, on occasion, because you can take the girl out of New York, but you can't take New York out of the girl.
Oh, it's very true.
I keep trying to become this
girl.
Southern, this sweet Southern gal, but I don't know if that's ever going to happen.
I love that. I know we're a little tough up here, New Jersey.
Yeah.
Something that you said ticked off. I don't remember where I read this, but it said, if you find yourself offended all the time, that's a sign that you've got stuff to work on. And
absolutely.
You think of people, and yourself, like what offends you, and now I try to catch that. But it's so funny. I've seen things on, working with, I've had to call the help desk about 1 billion times, and I won't go into the details, but I spent Friday, like yesterday, basically on the phone trying to make things work.
Fun.
They weren't working. And it kept saying, we'll send you an email. And they never did. So I was like, going a little crazy. But at one point, the funniest story is when my Apple ID, we have our podcast on Apple, right? And people leave reviews there. And sometimes I can log in and sometimes I can't. And I don't know why. I can log in through iTunes, but I can't when I go right to my Apple ID. So when they have a new way, I have a very old account apparently, and they have a new way of verifying that you are who you are. They go right to your security questions. So they'll let you reset your password, and you're fooled into thinking that you're all ready to go. And then they present your security questions. Well, there's a problem, Kathleen. My security questions are in Chinese.
How did that happen?
I have no idea. And so I tried Google Translate. I said, maybe they really are questions that were translated in Chinese and I can answer and translate it back into Chinese. I actually tried that. Didn't work. I called help. I think I've talked to like 2 or 3 different people and they're wonderful. I mean, I can't even say enough about the support people at Apple, but each one has sworn to me that they can't get into my account and they can't change anything. And I said, well, at one point I said, well, someone obviously did get into my account.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing they were Chinese. So I've been back and forth and back and forth. And finally, I said to them, I said, so you're telling me you can't do anything about this. You're a help desk and you're going to leave me like this. And this one woman was so sweet. She said, no, we're not. I'm going to take notes and we're going to keep working on it. And I'm going to pass it on to my colleague and we're going to figure it out. But I'm sorry, I couldn't fix it tonight. And I said, that's okay. I really appreciate it. There's just a different interaction now, no matter how crazy it gets.
Yes.
I have a sense of humor. I remember getting really upset with people on the phone. And that wasn't about them at all. They were touching something and they were offending me. I was offended. So that's like my cue.
I've been there so much. I'm so glad to have, I get, as you do, we get review processes, but to have that awareness is so freeing so that you just don't have to be that way all the time.
And the love that you get back, and I'm reminded of that I picked up this slim book years and years ago. It was written in the 80s, late 80s, by Dr. Gerald Jablonski. It's got that download, that episode when I went over the book has gotten the most downloads of any other episode. And he talks about love. The title of the book is Love is Letting Go of Fear. And so much of what you said reminds me of that. Like when you can't feel love and fear at the same time. It's impossible. So you're either approaching a situation in love or you're approaching it in fear. And so he talks a lot about if someone's coming at you and they're angry or offended by you, they're really afraid.
Yeah.
Behind it is fear. So if you react and you get that fear going, then it's fear and it's going nowhere good. But if you can take a moment, like you said, it was so powerful what you said, is just say, well, what are they dealing with? And have that moment of empathy. Then you approach in love. And it changes the whole interaction. And it's so simple, yet so profound. So much of what you said reminds me of that. And we have to remember that we're not angry, we're fearful.
You're right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And taking fear and looking at it from, what was fear originally gifted to us for? To keep us safe.
Right.
But ultimately, part of, in everything of life, it's become a tool to keep us from living too.
Oh, wow. Yes.
And knowing the difference and knowing how fear can actually hurt us. I mean, being in fear all the time just wears on our entire health, mentally,
like our physical
physically,
body.
yes, everything. But I like to also say that we can develop a new relationship with fear when it comes to doing things in life. So we need fear to help us stay safe, to be smart. I like to say, that's why I always tell my boys, just be smart about what you're doing.
I love that.
Be smart. Because I don't want them living in fear. I don't want to live in fear, but I want to be smart about what I'm doing. Because fear is meant to keep us aware of how we're doing things and to what, the lions, tigers, and bears, oh my. But when fear is keeping us in a box, when it's keeping us from doing things, from living life fully, for example, you probably saw it's been 50 years since I've gotten on a horse and the opportunity came, and boy, that voice was screaming, don't do that. You can't do that. Some things could happen. You need to do this. You have responsibilities at home. You have your mom. Don't go. Well, scream all you want. I'm going. And even just getting on, that voice was still screaming, but I have to weigh my life and what I want it to be. And it's going to scream if I get on an airplane to go somewhere. It's going to scream sometimes if I'm in a park walking by myself. But I have to look at, do I want to be smart or do I want to live in a box?
That's so good.
I don't. I want to live my life. I want to experience adventures. I want to have fun. I want to live fully.
And what did it feel like on the horse?
It was wonderful.
Oh, that's so wonderful.
She's a little stinker. I've ridden her twice and we're having this power pull. She and I are.
I love that.
It was wonderful. And I'm so glad I didn't let the voice drown me out.
I'm so glad you didn't either. And horses are so healing to be around. I had horses when I was young and I enjoyed, I never got into that like crazy horse obsession that other girls did, but I just love animals so much that I love taking care of them and brushing them and talking to them. I think they're very healing to be around them. They're so tuned into you. Yeah. So that's so, you're great. I love that you don't just work on yourself, that you turn it around to use to help other people. That to me, that's just so like fulfilling, I bet.
It is. And I know it's my purpose. It's a passion. And the biggest thing is I know how much I suffered and I know how so many women are, oh, I'm fine. I'm fine.
Yeah.
No, we're not. No,
we're
not.
My mother was like that. She put up with a lot. And it was sort of taught to me that you do that. You carry whatever. And I also love that you just support, that women are here to support each other, not compete.
Sisterhood.
It's so powerful. And it's an old thing that's coming back. It used to be how we lived, It's so great. You're doing great work.
Feeding each other's fire. It's wonderful. Thank you.
What I also love about you is that you you let things unfold naturally. Like it built into like the next step. Like you didn't
Oh,
say,
honey, I'm
I'm going to be a
impatient.
this.
No, but I am impatient at times. So don't give
So
me
am
too
I.
much
So am
credit.
I. You're so funny. We are separated at birth. I'm impatient and I'm stubborn.
I'm not a very good waiter.
No, I'm so stubborn. It's scary. And I am impatient. Very, and I'm a control freak. I'm working on it.
Yeah, I think that's natural, a gift of women that we have. But that is part of the work as well,
Yeah.
because, we can only control ourselves. And I think that's one reason why we try so hard to control everything out here, because there's so much often here. And I don't mean that
Yes.
that we're broken or, we need fixing. It's just that we have so much stuff in here that was never ours to carry.
Right.
And until we get it out of there, it's that I'm just going to control everything out here. And it's an
Yeah.
avoidance because we don't want to face. That's what I think the racing through life is about. Whether you're speeding on the road at 85 and a 60, or you're speeding through your day, my question is, what are you avoiding? What are you not ready to face?
Wow. And that reactive way that you get when you're just
Yeah.
going through life and you're very busy and people get all obsessed with their house and their kids and their job, and you barely live. You're just reacting,
Yeah. But I love
very
this
powerful.
conversation. The more, and
Yeah.
that's what podcasting, in my opinion, is about. The more people that you can touch, the more women that I can reach, to have them just say, I'm ready. Not necessarily, I don't mean to work with me, to work with somebody, just to do the work.
I know what you're saying. You're saying yes. Well, like Kathy Heller said, and I love her for this. She always said, you have to find your person. And she said, I may not be your person. I just love that, because that means she's spreading the message and not necessarily that you have to work with her.
And I will give her a kudos too, as long as you are too. I mean, that was your big lesson. My big lesson, and we talk about control, was being a C student. When she taught
I
us
love
that.
That's my favorite part. I was never a C student. Yeah, in fact, that was tough for me. I was like, okay, that's a nice thought, but I don't know. But yeah, just to tell people that weren't in the class, she said, don't wait till something's perfect. Just start and you'll figure it out. And you can be a C student. And she said, write yourself a permission slip.
Mm-hmm.
And
that was huge.
It finally got through to me. And I wanted to say too, with the control issue, I think the podcast has helped me so much, because I am not in control of what you say.
Ooh.
And you make the episode. My guest makes the episode, and I'm not controlling it at all. In fact, I'm enjoying not being in control.
It's interesting. Interesting. Because then we have because you do solo episodes as well. I've listened to yours. Mm-hmm. And I do as well. It's interesting. I hadn't looked at it that way.
Me neither. Not until I talk to you. That's why I love talking to people, because it just sparks these things in our head. Mm-hmm. But I'm so grateful to Kathy Heller and her class, because it brought me all of you.
Agreed.
And this mindfulness, I just don't know what I would do without. That's part of what my very first show was about, was for this year, when I just said, if I didn't have these people, I'm not sure I would have stuck with it. And it wouldn't have been as fun. Just to have this
true.
People that think you have to be around like-minded people who are trying to do the same kind of thing. And I was a bit of a loner for a while there, and this is much nicer.
And I agree with you 100%. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because having left upstate New York at 61 years of age, never living anywhere else other than upstate New York.
That's very brave.
And moving south to a place that is where I knew one person, that was it. Wow. You do get lonely. I mean, I had my mom lives with me, but it's such a huge change in that loneliness. And that group was it was a very unique group. And you're right. And in fact, one was missing in action recently. John has been missing in action recently.
Yeah.
Said, where have you been? I've missed him. I've missed seeing when certain ones disappear. It's like, oh, I hope everything's okay.
I feel the
really
same
a great
way.
Experience.
We build each other up, and it's almost like we already know each other, which is so lovely.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. So I'm very grateful for that. And I feel like it really did change my life.
Agreed.
Like I was ready to try something different. And I still don't know why I clicked that ad about a podcast. I mean,
I don't know either. She just came across my Instagram. Well,
you were guided.
The universe leads. That's right.
Yeah. Yeah. You were guided. Mm-hmm. And I want to just tell you a little story that I'm still freaking out about. I worked at a place where they hired me to be a tech writer, and they hired someone who wanted to get in this place. She had worked there like 18 years ago, and she wasn't a tech writer, but she was an engineer, and they wanted her to come back, and they wanted her to be trained. They said, you can train her. She'll be a tech writer with you. Well, it was really difficult because she hadn't been there for 18 years and she wasn't a tech writer, and there was so much work to do. And she desperately needed to be hired. She was a contractor at the time, and she desperately needed benefits because she had a lot of health issues. So we started to be friendly, but it was kind of driving me nuts. I was getting very frustrated. I was like, why did they do this to me? I have to train this person. She's starting from nothing. Oh my God. But she was very sweet and she tried so hard that I just did it. I'm a Girl Scout, right? My husband calls me a Girl Scout. I was like, okay, you gave me this task. I'm not going to like it. I'm going to bitch about it to my husband and my son when I come home, but I'm going to do it. And so I did it. And at one point I was thinking of leaving, but I wasn't looking. And I got a call from a recruiter I love. And she said, I have the perfect job for you. I know you're not looking, but I have the perfect job for you. And it was, and I still miss it. And I might go back there. But anyway, this is neither here nor there. So several months go by. I touch base with this person regularly, right? Just to see how she's doing. The upshot is she got hired when I left because they had headcount because I left. So she got her permanent job. She has benefits. There's a lot more to the story, but the real point is I had a realization that the universe had put me there specifically to help her. And all I could see for a little while was that I was irritated and how could they be so unfair to me? And why do I have to train this person? She's not a tech writer. Well, guess what? She's a tech writer now. Her life is much more secure. And she said, I'm sorry that you had to leave for me to be hired, but I'm so grateful. And I was like, stupid me, once again, right? The universe, you just didn't get it. I didn't get it at the time. So now it makes me feel so good that I did that for her, that I was used in that way. That's the thing. I was used by God or the universe or source, however you like to say it. And it's a very powerful lesson. And when I told this to my cousin and my friend, we were out to dinner. My cousin later sent me an email and she said, I'm so impressed with you that you see that experience in that way. She said, it really, I think when you do that work and you see something like that and you share it, it helps somebody else see something in their life.
Yes. Thank you.
That's what I didn't get. I didn't get that. I was like, okay, I am pretty excited that I was used in this way and that I could see that. Took me a while, but I eventually
You mean it wasn't all about you? Like I say, you mean it's all about me?
Of course it was. It was all about me. They're not treating me fairly. But yeah, however long it took, I did, and then I just felt so good because she needed that job so badly. And I made that happen. But I was just a tool. I was an instrument. I was used. And so now I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to start looking for that and be more sensitive to that. The learning just continues, right?
Absolutely. It's a beautiful thing. Thank you for sharing that.
I could talk to you probably 8 more episodes. I could,
I know.
I could have a Kathleen McDermott series.
There's so much we haven't even touched on yet.
I know. But we'll
pick up on mine. We'll pick up on mine.
Okay. If there's anything else that you want to share with us or want me to put in the show notes, I'm going to put a link to your podcast. Is there anything else?
Your life, your way. And if anyone, I'd always offer a conversation, free conversation to answer questions about, what does coaching entail to reduce stress? What does the restorative yoga, if someone is just interested in the restorative yoga for stress relief? Conversations, because honestly, I cannot stand to be pressured into buying things. I don't like high pressure sales. I don't do that. But conversations, because ultimately, I hope that you walk away with something at that point in time, the end of the conversation, that will at least give you something to take with you. And if we're meant to work together, great. And if not, I might be able to guide you to someone else that might be better for you, a better fit. But
again, you're in the flow there. I love that.
It just really isn't all about me. It really isn't. So I can be reached via email, kmyourlifeyourway@gmail.com, kmyourlifeyourway@gmail.
Great.
And
So I'll
thank you.
put
This
that in
was
the show notes.
wonderful. Thank you so much. I've
I
had so
just
much
love
fun.
starting the day with you. I mean, I just feel like uplifted, like I'm going to have a really good day.
We are. I feel the same way. Thank you so much. You make me laugh. I love people that I can just laugh with and have fun with. So thank you
Oh,
very
I know.
much.
That's the one thing I think that saves us, right? Is that laughter.
Yes.
So true.
Yes.
Well, thank you for sharing. I know people are going to get excited by what you said. They're going to have some light bulbs go off. So I always enjoy that
Wonderful.
to
I
share
hope
this
so.
information. And I'll talk to you soon.
All righty.
Take
Thanks.
care.
Yeah. Oops, I'm
Bye-bye.
stumbling over my words. Thank you so much.